Hi, enjoy listening. Amanda Carter paused on the cracked sidewalk outside St. Luke's Chapel, leaning into the handle of an old metal cart that rattled under the weight of a burlap sack filled with potatoes. She was short, with warm brown eyes and wind-chapped cheeks. Her breath came in small clouds as the late September breeze rolled down the street. "Thank you, Lord, for letting us make it this far," she whispered to herself. "At least autumn means we won't starve so fast." Just a few blocks away, Amanda lived with her mother, Helen Carter, in a rotting 2-story boarding house on Willow Street. The building leaned so badly that people joked it was a miracle it was still standing. Most of the tenants had moved out years ago when the city labelled it unsafe for habitation. Those who remained simply had nowhere else to go. The sack of potatoes in Amanda's cart was a blessing. The prices had dropped with the harvest. Normally, on her hospital custodian's wage, she couldn't afford much beyond instant noodles and tea that smelled faintly of burlap. But this month, she could splurge on potatoes, and tucked into her coat pocket, a single vanilla marshmallow she had bought for her mother. It wasn't much, but it would be the highlight of Helen's day. Helen was a retired factory worker, a veteran of 40 years on the assembly line at the local cement plant. Her pension should have been enough to live on, but since her diagnosis a year ago, almost every cent went toward pain medication. The government-issued pills were useless, more like vitamins than real relief. So Amanda paid for the imported ones. They were expensive, but Amanda couldn't bear to see her mother suffer. After paying rent and utilities, the two women survived on what was left. Pasta that clumped into one sticky mass, thin oatmeal, and bread that went stale in a day. Meat was a luxury reserved for holidays. They had no one to help them. Amanda hadn't bought herself new clothes in over a decade. She still wore the faded jeans and worn cardigan from her early 20s, back when she was dating a dock worker named Paul. She'd thought he was the love of her life until the day she told him she was pregnant. By the following week, he was gone, and soon after, so was the baby. Her mother had been the one to pull her through. "Life doesn't end because of one man, Mandy," Helen used to say. "The world is full of men like him. Don't give them the chance to hurt you again." So Amanda didn't. She kept her life small, her circle even smaller. Work, home, caring for her mother. That was all. Now, after shifting the heavy sack of potatoes into the shed behind the boarding house, Amanda climbed the warped wooden stairs to their apartment. The second-floor hallway smelled of mildew, the yellowed wallpaper curling at the corners. Inside, she boiled half a pot of potatoes, mashed them with salt and a little butter, and set aside the marshmallow for later. She helped her mother through her evening routine, then kissed her forehead before heading out for the night shift at St. Mary's Hospital. The hospital sat on the edge of town, right next to the city landfill. The smell was enough to make new patients gag, and the streets nearby were often prowled by vagrants and junk dealers, looking for whatever they could sell. Complaints had been made for years, but City Hall never seemed to care. Or maybe it did now. A new mayor had been sworn in just weeks ago, and rumours swirled about how aggressive he was in tackling corruption and crime. Amanda had overheard the nurses talking about him, a young man named Gregory Holt, sent from the state capital to clean up the mess. She wasn't interested in politics. Her only goal was to get through another shift without any disasters. But that night, fate had a very different plan. By midnight, the hospital halls were quiet, except for the rhythmic beep of monitors and the occasional creak of the old HVAC system. Amanda had finished mopping the floors in the cardiology wing and was pushing her cart toward the back entrance where the dumpsters sat. The air outside was cold and carried the sour tang of the landfill. The security light above the loading dock flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. Amanda She lifted the heavy lid and froze. A man was inside. Not just inside, moving. He looked like he had been dragged through every gutter in the city. Filthy clothes shredded into strips, skin smeared with grime and dried blood, hair matted into knots. His lips were pale, his eyes half closed, his breath ragged. "Help me," he whispered. His voice was hoarse, and the words trembled in the cold night air. Before she could ask what happened, he collapsed against the metal wall of the dumpster and slid down, unconscious. Amanda's training from years at the hospital kicked in. She climbed onto the side of the dumpster, grabbed his arm, and heaved him over the edge, wincing as his limp body hit the ground. She knelt beside him, checking his pulse. Nothing. Her heart pounded. She didn't think twice. She began chest compressions, her gloved hands pressing down in a steady rhythm. Come on, she muttered under her breath. She tilted his head back and gave 2 breaths, ignoring the smell, the dirt, the possibility of infection. After what felt like an eternity, his chest rose sharply and he coughed, gasping for air. Relief flooded through her. "You're gonna be okay," she said, steadying him. "Just stay still." He tried to speak, but broke into a fit of coughing. "Save it. I'm getting help." She bolted inside, burst into the cardiology wing, and nearly collided with a nurse dozing at the reception desk. "We need a stretcher outside, now!" The nurse blinked at her, confused. "At this hour? What?" "A man, in the dumpster. He's alive, but barely." Within minutes, Amanda and the duty nurse were pushing a stretcher across the lot. The attending physician on call, Dr. Morton, followed behind, clearly annoyed at being dragged out of his office. When they saw the man, his scowl deepened. "You brought this into my hospital," he snapped. "Do you have any idea what kind of diseases he could be carrying?" "He's a human being who just went into cardiac arrest," Amanda shot back. "What did you want me to do? Leave him to die in the trash?" "Yes," Dr. Morton's voice echoed in the night. "That would have been the sensible thing to do. Instead, you've just handed us hours of paperwork and a sanitation nightmare." Amanda clenched her jaw, refusing to answer. Together, they lifted the man onto the stretcher. His head lolled to the side, and Amanda caught a glimpse of something unusual. Despite the grime, his facial features were refined, almost familiar, but she didn't have time to dwell on it. The nurse wheeled him toward the ER, and Amanda turned back to collect her cleaning cart, her hands still trembling from the adrenaline. Somewhere deep down, She knew she had just stepped into something far bigger than she understood. The next morning, Amanda was summoned to the administrator's office before she'd even had her first cup of coffee. The hospital's top floor smelled faintly of furniture polish and money, a different world from the bleach and ammonia scent of the floors she cleaned. Mr. Chandler, the hospital administrator, was waiting behind a glossy mahogany desk. His tailored suit looked like it cost more than Amanda made in 3 months. He didn't offer her a seat. "I've been informed," he began, "that you personally brought an unidentified vagrant into our facility last night. Is that correct?" Amanda straightened her back. "I found a man unconscious in the dumpster. His heart had stopped. I revived him. That's not your job," Chandler cut in. "In fact, it is the opposite of what you should have done. We've been working with the city to keep vagrants away from this hospital. The last thing we need is staff inviting them inside." Amanda's stomach twisted. "I didn't invite him. I saved his life." Chandler's expression hardened. "Do you have any idea the risk you exposed this hospital to? Liability issues, infectious diseases, the cleanup costs. The police will probably want a statement. It's completely unacceptable." Something inside Amanda snapped. "With all due respect, sir, if you think the right thing to do is leave a dying man in the trash, then maybe you're in the wrong business." The air in the office seemed to drop 10 degrees. Chandler stood up slowly, his jaw tightening. "I don't pay my custodial staff to lecture me. Clean out your locker. You're finished here." Amanda blinked, stunned. "You're firing me? For saving someone's life?" "For insubordination, and for endangering this facility," he said, his voice clipped. "Security will escort you out." It was over in less than 5 minutes. She walked out the front doors in a daze, clutching a small cardboard box with her few belongings, a thermos, a photo of her mother, and her ID badge with the magnetic strip already deactivated. Outside, the wind felt sharper than before. Her thoughts tumbled over one another. How would she pay for rent? Her mother's medication? Groceries? By the time she got home, she had decided not to tell Helen. At least not yet. She couldn't put that weight on her mother's already fragile health. So every morning, Amanda put on her uniform and left the house as if she was still working, spending the day trudging from one business to another, asking for work. Everywhere, the answer was the same. Sorry, not hiring. The week dragged on, each day heavier than the last. By Friday, she was down to her last $40. The potatoes were half gone, and she was starting to imagine what it would be like to skip dinner entirely. That evening, as she turned onto Willow Street, she saw a black sedan parked at the curb near her building. Sleek, polished, expensive. A tall man in a tailored coat stepped out, holding a bouquet of white lilies. Amanda froze. She recognized him instantly. It was the man from the dumpster. Clean-shaven now, his hair neatly cut, his face striking. And in that moment, she realized exactly who he was. Mayor Gregory Holt. He walked toward her with a faint smile. "Miss Carter," he said, extending the flowers, "I think I owe you my life." Amanda didn't take the flowers right away. She stood rooted to the cracked pavement, the cold biting at her cheeks. "I don't understand, she finally said. You in the dumpster, Gregory finished for her. Yes, I imagine I didn't make the best first impression. She blinked at him. You're the mayor. How does the mayor end up unconscious in a hospital dumpster? Gregory's jaw tightened, and his eyes darted briefly toward the sedan, where a driver in a dark suit waited with the engine running. Not here, he said quietly. Too many ears. He gestured toward a small coffee shop on the corner. Amanda hesitated. Every instinct told her to walk away, but curiosity pulled harder. Inside, the shop smelled of cinnamon and burnt espresso. Gregory ordered 2 coffees and chose a table in the far corner. His coat was expensive wool, but he sat hunched, almost wary, as if the wrong person might overhear. I didn't just get lost and fall asleep in a dumpster, he began. I was attacked. Amanda raised an eyebrow. By who? Some random mugger? He shook his head. The governor's security team. That caught her off guard. Why would the governor want you dead? Gregory took a slow sip of coffee, watching her over the rim. Because I was getting too close to uncovering the contracts he's been signing with shell companies. Millions in public funds disappearing. And when I refused to play along, he let the silence finish the sentence. They planned to replace me with someone else, someone who looks like me. Amanda frowned. Looks like you? A double, he said flatly. They found a man at one of the city camps, offered him money, clothes, and probably more than a little blackmail to take my place. Then they drugged me, dumped me somewhere I'd never be found, and told the double to start undoing everything I'd worked for. Amanda stared at him. That sounds like a bad political thriller. I wish it was, Gregory said, but if you hadn't found me, I'd be dead. They wouldn't have risked me getting back to the press. The weight of it sank in. This wasn't just about some personal vendetta. This was the kind of corruption that could rot a whole city from the inside out. Amanda leaned back. So what now? He set down his coffee, leaning forward. Now I fight back, but I can't do it alone, and the first thing I need to do is make sure the people who tried to erase me are out of power for good. She shook her head slightly. I'm not a political person, Mr. Holt. You're the only person in this city who risked herself to help me without asking for something in return, he said. That makes you exactly the kind of person I need. Amanda wasn't sure what scared her more, the idea that he might be telling the truth, or the possibility that he was right about needing her. Amanda's life had gone from bleach buckets and mops to whispered strategy sessions in less than a week. She still wasn't sure how she'd ended up sitting in the back of the mayor's sedan, dressed in the one decent blazer she owned, heading toward a meeting she technically had no business attending. Gregory had been clear. Tonight's about gathering proof. No speeches, no arguments. Just listen and keep your eyes open. The meeting was in a private room at an upscale restaurant on the riverfront, the kind of place Amanda had only seen from the outside, its warm light spilling through the windows onto polished stone sidewalks. Inside, the smell of seared steak and aged wine mingled with the low hum of expensive conversation. The private room's walls were lined with bookshelves and oil paintings, but Amanda noticed the real detail: soundproofing panels tucked discreetly into the corners. 3 men were already seated at the heavy oak table, their tailored suits practically shouting old money. Gregory introduced them with a politician's smoothness. City council members, both allies and those on the fence. Amanda took a seat near the wall, hands folded in her lap. She didn't need to speak. She just needed to be invisible. The conversation started politely. Talk of budgets, upcoming ordinances, but soon turned sharper. Gregory leaned forward, dropping just enough details about the governor's suspicious contracts to make the men glance at each other nervously. Amanda's eyes scanned the table. That's when she noticed one councilman, Riker, a broad-shouldered man with slick hair, subtly sliding his phone under the table, angling it toward Gregory. She recognized the move instantly. Recording. She leaned toward Gregory, murmuring without moving her lips, "He's recording you." Gregory didn't flinch. He simply shifted the topic to something innocuous, a charity fundraiser, and smiled warmly at Riker until the man, irritated, slid his phone back into his pocket. After the meeting, they stepped into the cold night air. Gregory let out a slow breath. Good catch. If that recording had made it to the wrong people, they'd twist my words into a resignation speech. Amanda stuffed her hands into her coat pockets. "You're making enemies faster than you're making friends." "Exactly," Gregory said, "which means we're getting close." The next day, she learned just how close. A plain white envelope slid under her apartment door, contained a single sheet of paper with 6 words typed neatly in the center. "Stay away from Holt, or else." Her stomach knotted. There was no signature, no return address, just the faint smell of cigarette smoke clinging to the page. She didn't tell Gregory. Not yet. But the message was clear. Whoever had thrown the mayor in that dumpster wasn't done trying to bury him. The first strike came on a Wednesday night. Amanda had just finished her late shift at the hospital, her feet aching, her eyes heavy. The parking lot was nearly empty, lit only by a few flickering lamps. She'd almost reached her car when she heard it, the faint crunch of gravel behind her. She turned, scanning the shadows. No one. Her pulse ticked up. She unlocked the car with a shaky hand, slid inside, and hit the lock button. The moment she started the engine, headlights flared in her rearview mirror. A black SUV rolled up behind her, blocking the exit. Amanda's chest tightened. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a baseball cap pulled low, his face shadowed. He walked toward her door, casual, like he wasn't in a hurry. But there was something in his gait that made her skin crawl. She considered flooring it, but the SUV wasn't moving. Instead, she reached for her phone and froze. The man lifted a finger, tapping it against her window once, slowly. Then he leaned down so she could see his mouth form the words, "Stay away." Then he stepped back, climbed into the SUV, and drove off. No license plate, no reason for her to think the police could do anything about it. By the time she got home, her hands were trembling so badly, she nearly dropped her keys. Gregory was waiting for her in his sedan, parked in front of her building. The moment he saw her face, he stepped out, What happened? She hesitated, then told him everything. He listened, jaw tight, eyes darkening with each word. They're trying to scare you off, he said finally, which means they know you're important. Important? I'm just a hospital janitor who happened to pull you out of a dumpster. You're also the only person I can trust, Gregory said. That makes you a target and an asset. Amanda laughed bitterly. An asset who's going to get herself killed. Gregory didn't smile. Not if we hit them first. The plan came together faster than Amanda expected. Gregory had an informant, someone inside the governor's office willing to talk. They arranged a midnight meeting at an abandoned train depot on the edge of the city. Amanda didn't want to go. Every nerve in her body told her to walk away, but when Gregory asked, "Will you be there?" she found herself nodding. The depot smelled of rust and damp concrete. Somewhere far off, water dripped steadily. Gregory paced, checking his watch. He should be here. The sound of footsteps echoed down the platform. A man in a hooded sweatshirt appeared, hands shoved deep into his pockets. He didn't make it to them. A gunshot cracked through the air. The man collapsed, blood blooming across his chest. Amanda froze, the sound ringing in her ears. Gregory grabbed her arm. "Run!" Amanda had never heard a gunshot that close before. It didn't sound like the sharp cracks in movies. It was heavier, uglier, like the air itself had been ripped open. Gregory yanked her toward the far end of the platform. "Move!" Her shoes slapped against the concrete as another shot rang out, ricocheting off a steel beam a few feet from her head. Sparks spat into the air. They bolted down a narrow stairwell to the tracks, the smell of oil and dust choking her lungs. Gregory's grip on her arm was iron. She could hear someone above them, boots pounding against the platform. Then the thud of another body hitting the floor. Amanda's legs screamed for her to stop, but adrenaline kept her moving. They ran along the rusted rails, ducking into a maintenance tunnel, just as the faint beam of a flashlight swept across the tracks. In the pitch-black tunnel, Gregory pressed her against the wall, one hand over her mouth. They stayed like that, silent except for the echo of their own breathing, until the footsteps faded. When they finally emerged into the night, they were 2 miles from the depot. The city lights, a distant shimmer. Gregory's hands were trembling when he lit a cigarette. "That was no random shooting," he said, voice low. "That was a hit, and they didn't care who else saw." Amanda wiped her palms on her jeans, still shaking. "The guy, the informant, he's dead." Gregory met her eyes, the glow of the cigarette tip reflecting in them. "Dead. And now we're the only ones who know why he came." "What did he know?" she asked. Gregory hesitated, as if deciding how much to tell her. Finally, "Enough to take the governor down for good. But if they think you know it too?" Amanda understood. The letter, the man in the parking lot, the SUV. They weren't warnings anymore. They were preludes. "Then we have to disappear," she said. Gregory shook his head. "No, we go on offense, before they erase us too." By the next morning, the depot shooting was all over the news, labelled a gang-related incident, with no political connection. Gregory cursed at the TV, muttering about planted reporters. Amanda poured herself coffee, her hands finally steady enough to to hold the mug. She didn't know if she was terrified or furious. Maybe both. But one thing had shifted. She wasn't just cleaning up Gregory Holt's mess anymore. She was in it. By the time the sun went down, Amanda felt like she'd aged 10 years in one day. Gregory's apartment, a cramped one-bedroom in a building with peeling paint and the smell of fried onions in the hallway, had turned into a war room. The coffee table was buried under stacks of printouts, burner phones, a laptop covered in stickers, and a pistol Gregory kept within arm's reach. Amanda wasn't sure if that was for their protection or to make a point. "Rule number 1, Gregory said, pacing. "We trust no one. Not the cops, not the press, not even the so-called whistleblowers. Everyone's for sale in this city." Amanda leaned against the counter, watching him. "And rule number 2? "Rule number 2 is we move faster than they do. We're going to bait them." She blinked. "Bait them? You mean make them come to us?" Gregory smiled. Not warmly, but with that sharp, dangerous edge she was learning to recognize. "If they think we already have everything the informant was going to give me, they'll make a mistake. They'll send someone sloppy, someone who can lead us back to the top." Amanda felt her stomach tighten. "And when they do?" "We follow them home," Gregory said. "And then we burn the whole house down." The plan started with a leak. Amanda. Using a voice modulator, Gregory had pulled from some spy store catalogue, called a local political blogger under the alias Ellen Price. She hinted that she had documents linking the governor's office to an offshore bank account. The blogger ate it up, promising to keep her source anonymous, which Gregory said was code for "the governor will hear about this before the end of the day." And he was right. By nightfall, Amanda's phone, the burner, buzzed with an unknown number. A man's voice, deep and slow, said, "Miss Price, we need to meet. Midnight, the old foundry off River Street. Come alone." Amanda hung up and looked at Gregory. "Trap?" she asked. He nodded. "Of course, but if we play it right, we can turn it back on them." The foundry was a shell of crumbling brick and twisted steel, the air thick with the metallic tang of rust. Amanda stood in the center of the main floor, a flashlight in her hand, her breath visible in the cold air. The footsteps came first, deliberate, unhurried. A man stepped into the light. Expensive suit, polished shoes, and a small black pistol in his hand. "You have something that doesn't belong to you," he said. Amanda swallowed hard. "You mean the proof that your boss is stealing millions from taxpayers?" His expression didn't change. "I mean the thing you're about to hand me before you stop breathing." From the shadows above, there was a faint creak. Amanda didn't look up. She didn't need to. Gregory was there. The man took one step closer. That's when it happened. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the foundry as Gregory dropped from the catwalk, landing behind the man and slamming him against the wall. The pistol clattered to the ground. Amanda kicked it out of reach. Gregory pinned the man, his voice low and lethal. "You're going to tell us exactly who sent you, and then you're going to take us to them." The man spat on the floor. "You're already dead, both of you." Gregory's smile was thin. "Maybe, but we're not going quietly." The man's name was Vincent Hale, and he was more than a hired gun. He was the governor's personal fixer. Amanda knew the second Gregory cuffed his wrists with a plastic zip tie that things had crossed into no-return territory. In the back of Gregory's beat-up sedan, Vincent sat in silence, his eyes fixed on the streetlights flashing through the window. Gregory drove like a man on a mission, one hand on the wheel, the other on the pistol they'd taken from Vincent. When they stopped in an empty parking lot behind a boarded-up diner, Gregory yanked Vincent out and shoved him against the wall. "You're going to give us a name," Gregory said. "Not your boss, the one he answers to." Vincent smirked. "You think the governor's the top of the food chain?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "There's someone you've never even heard of, and if you think you're walking away after tonight, you're dreaming." Amanda's pulse thudded in her ears. "Then tell us, if you're already dead, what's the harm?" Vincent hesitated. Gregory didn't wait. He pressed the gun against Vincent's ribs. Finally, the name came out. A name Amanda recognized. A billionaire real estate developer whose face was on billboards across the state. And suddenly, everything clicked. The campaign donations, the land deals, the construction contracts. Gregory's plan was brutal in its simplicity. Go public before sunrise. They wouldn't trust a single journalist. Instead, they'd flood every corner of the internet with documents, recordings, and video of Vincent naming names. Amanda worked the laptop while Gregory kept watch at the window. The night felt too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before something breaks. At 4:13 a.m., Amanda hit upload. For a moment, she thought they'd made. Gregory's voice was calm, almost resigned. "They're here." The first shot shattered the front window. Amanda dropped to the floor, glass slicing her arm. Gregory fired back, the sound deafening in the small room. Vincent dove for the door, but Amanda slammed it shut and locked it. "You're not going anywhere," she hissed. Smoke started to fill the air, not from gunfire, but from something burning outside. Gregory grabbed Amanda's hand, pulling her toward the back exit. "We go now." They ran into the alley, the night alive with sirens in the distance. Amanda didn't look back until they reached Gregory's car. In the dim light, she saw the dark stain spreading across his shirt. "Gregory!" He waved her off, shoving the flash drive into her palm. "Doesn't matter. What matters is you get this out. Everywhere. Promise me." Her throat tightened. "I promise." By sunrise, the video had gone viral. The governor's face was on every screen, flanked by the billionaire developers. Arrest warrants followed within hours. But Gregory wasn't there to see it. Amanda stood at the edge of the river that afternoon. The city skyline blurred through her tears. The flash drive felt light in her pocket now, almost unreal, considering the weight it had carried. She'd gone from a paralegal with a quiet life to someone who'd stood in the crosshairs of power and pulled the trigger back. The cost was carved into her heart, but so was the truth. Sometimes the only way to survive was to set the board on fire and make the last move yourself. If you like the story, I would be very happy to have your support. Click the thumbs up. And to not miss new stories, subscribe and click on the bell. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and all the best.